This time I'll call a special call board meeting of the Haywood County Board of Education to order. This time I'd like to ask Dr. Rogers if he'd lead us in our board prayer. Please rise for the board prayer, immediately followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to call upon you. We know that you're able. You're abundantly able to do more than we could ever ask for or imagine. So God, tonight we ask that you would open up our minds that we might understand, our hearts that we might receive, and our ears that we may hear what's best for our children. Father, we know that your will is perfect. So God, it's our goal tonight to follow your will. Lord, we thank you for the teachers. We thank you for the staff, the faculties that have surrounded our children. Lord, they are our most precious commodity. God, you protect them. We'll give you all praise, honor, and glory in the name that's above every name. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Under our announcements, our next regular board meeting will be held here at the Education Center on Monday, August the 9th at 7 p.m. Any other announcements, board members? I'd like to announce that the members that you do not see present here are present, but they're coming in electronically. So that is part of our policy that we do allow that to happen. Many of our board members had business obligations and are traveling. Some people have loved ones in the hospital, so please keep some of those members in our prayers this afternoon. Are there any other announcements? Are there any adjustments to the agenda? If not, I ask for a motion for approval of the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I think Mr. Kirkpatrick was the first on the draw, so Mr. Kirkpatrick's made a motion. Do I hear a second? Second by Dr. Rogers. Any questions or discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I think that's everybody. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on our agenda is the open session. I think we've had several people sign up tonight to talk. I think we have about 21 or 22. I would urge the speakers tonight to get to your point quickly, because 3 minutes can go by real quick. And when you're at the end of 3 minutes, I'm going to call you to order and out of order, and I'm going to ask for the next speaker to come up. 3 minutes is plenty of time to do your talking and get your point across, but my advice is go to the point you want to make quickly. And don't ramble, because I've seen it happen too many times before. So stay on task, and we want to hear what you have to say tonight. Now is the time period designated by the Board of Education for public comments. This time is set aside for comments from the general public in regard to matters of concern to the public. However, comments addressing specific students and/or personnel are prohibited due to confidentiality laws and regulations. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board requests that all speakers adhere to the time limitation and prohibition against mentioning individual students and personnel. As I call your name, if you would come up to the podium here and introduce yourself. The first one has been signed up is Stephanie Bell.
members. Stephanie Bell here. And with more people this time, but we need to get these masks off of our children. It is not up to the government to make health decisions for our children. Governor Cooper said that they're going to segregate our kids between vaxxed and non-vaxxed. Are you guys familiar with Brown versus Board of Education? Segregating our children has been part of our history, segregating people, and they're going to try to do that to our children. These standard cloth surgical masks offer no protection. The particle that comes through is 60 to 140 nanometers or 1 micron. The pore size in a surgical mask is 200 to 1,000 that size. They are basically nothing. They don't help our children whatsoever. The CDC has actually shown that K through 12 mortality rate from COVID is 0.00003 globally. We have written an affidavit, and many people have signed it under the state constitution and the oath that you guys took to uphold that constitution. Our rights and the rights of our children are being violated under the certain articles that we'll be discussing. So thank you guys for your time, and I'll allocate my time to someone else.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Next on is Kay Miller. Ms. Miller.
Hi, Chairman Francis, board members, school staff, Superintendent Nolte. Nice to be here tonight. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'll be brief. For me, this is a liberty issue. And don't let anyone tell you that if you don't support this, that you're selfish or you don't care about your neighbor or your family member. It's liberty. It's about liberty. This whole exercise this last year has been about control and compliance. And it's time to stop the compliance, and we're not going to put up with the control. So that's not directed at y'all. What I'm asking for y'all to do is to not mandate the mask. Let them have the option of whether or not they would want to wear a mask. I think especially little children, facial expression is really important in the learning process. And I think that from what I've heard, although I don't have little children, that the last year or so has been a really, really tough time for the school kids. So let's not make it any worse. And I wanted to briefly say this too, might be brought up again later. If Governor Cooper reinstates a mask mandate, don't do it. I encourage you to not do that. Y'all are listen to the parents of the children that are in the schools and those of us who pay taxes, we have a voice. And so the last thing I wanted to say was, again, control, compliance, and divisiveness. So united we stand, but divided we fall. So let's be united. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Next, Melissa Shipman, representing Moms of Haywood.
Hi guys, my name is Melissa Shipman. I'm going to be reading you your job description. The school board exists to oversee the activities of the school system, ensuring that students may have the best possible experience and outcome. The school board exists to establish important policies and make sure they are implemented properly. Budgeting is one of the most challenging responsibilities of the school board and requires the ability to listen to the priorities and the needs of staff, the community, and the student body. The board must also review student achievement data on a regular basis to evaluate the school's effectiveness and make changes as needed. As elected officials, you have sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of North Carolina. You swore to bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you would faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of your office according to the best of your abilities. So help you God. I'm going to allocate my time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shipman. And just for the record, you can't allocate further time. Okay. Just you've got 3 minutes and the next person's got 3 minutes. But thank you. Next, we have Krista. And I don't have a last name, but Krista.
Hi, my name is Krista. Anxiety, distracted, disconnected, panic, unable to concentrate, hard to breathe, and sad. Those are just a few ways to describe how my children felt. Last year, my children felt a lot of anxiety due to the mask. The school said they would take mask breaks, but hardly ever did. Our children can't walk into a different room, office, or step outside and get a mask break like you can. Wearing a mask has proven to negatively impact quality of education. Keeping a mask mandate is only harming our children. The ones who want to continue to get an education without a mask should be free to do so. Why are you imposing restrictions on our children's freedom? Children are more likely to succeed if they're happier. You learn more when you're socially and mentally happy. How about you align yourself with the students you claim to serve? Do the right thing, make it a choice. We parents know what is best for our children. We know the data behind all this, and it's not fooling anyone. Children need to see expressions. They need to see normalcy. Masks prevent our children from learning. Masks create a physiological barrier, which makes it easier for children to sit silently. Brains don't work without oxygen. Lack of oxygen can lead to neurodegenerative disease over time. Are you willing to put our children through MS or ALS over a 0.0003% risk? We know what is best for our children. Not a governor, not a school board member, not a lawyer, or even the House or Senate. It is against our constitutional rights for you to put a mask on our child. Please let the parents choose.
Thank you, Krista. Next, we have Mary Beth Cochran, representing parents.
Hello, my name is Mary Beth Cochran, and I'm raising grandkids that attend Bethel School District. My grandkids were supposed to attend summer school. However, I pulled them out due to being forced to wear masks, especially since Governor Roy Cooper had just eased the mask mandate at the Coca-Cola 600. If he can allow 50,000 fans to rub elbows and enjoy NASCAR, why won't he let our kids go back to school without masks? It's not only unfair, but unconstitutional. Our kids have gone all summer attending events and playing youth sports for Bethel without masks. Why should they now be forced to wear them again? The science has shown how harmful on many levels these masks are to our kids, and there isn't enough real science to show that the vaccines won't be more harmful than helpful to our kids. So my grandkids won't be getting the vaccine either. It's unfair, and as my grandkids' legal guardian, should be the only one whom decides whether they wear masks or not. Our kids have lost way too much from this pandemic and mask mandate. I will protest and pull my kids out of school if they are forced to start school without masks again. I will be protesting the school board and Governor Roy Cooper because it will be y'all's decision. So, for you not looking out for our kids' best interest, if you have to crumble to this mask mandate again, I hope it's not true. But in closing, I hope that everyone will come to realize the same snakes that are selling the pandemic are also selling the cure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cochran. Next, we have Kathleen Nikki Snyder.
Thank you for allowing me to talk. Kathleen Snyder, I have children in the Bethel School District. I'm not going to touch on what the masks aren't doing because everyone already has. I will touch on what they are doing for our children. I've washed these masks every day when my children come home from school, and they catch everything but a virus. They're covered in snot, spit, everything that our bodies feel like it needs to expel throughout the day is trapped and rebreathed all day long in these cloth face coverings that serve no medical purpose whatsoever. I think that it can't be argued what sort of bacterial infections could come from rebreathing that same harmful bacteria for hours a day on end. Our children aren't conscious enough to change their mask every time they readjust it or touch their face or anything as such, and we all know that they're moving them throughout the day. So I think that the fact of the matter is the science presents itself as it's more harmful than it is helpful to put our children in masks all day long. So it's really all I wanted to touch on.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Next, we have Casey Morgan.
Hi, my name is Casey Morgan. I have 3 children in Haywood County Schools. I'm going to read from you our affidavit. North Carolina State Constitution, Article 1, Section 1. We hold it to be self-evident that all persons are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, enjoyment of the fruits of their own labor, and the pursuit of happiness. We remind you of the fundamental principles in the supreme law of the land that secure my individual rights. Article 1, Section 2. All political power is vested in and derived from the people. All government of right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. Affiant comes as one of the people from which your power is derived. Your oath to office affirms that your main purpose is to protect and maintain my individual rights, holding up the Constitution. This includes the rights of my heritage, those in my care, my children. Affiant is being given as notice to you who are creating or enforcing health rules or mandates. Affiant claims you are infringing on the freedoms guaranteed to me as one of the people. You are also practicing health discrimination and segregation and are depriving people of their rights under the color of the law. Section 242 of Title 18 makes it a crime for a person acting under color of any law to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. My 3 sons have come home from school exhausted, with headaches, with bloody noses, from wearing masks, because it's not happened since they got out of school. One of my children has a neuroimmune disorder, and I'm sick of the mask being used to say, but it's for the protection of those who are immune compromised. This mask does not help him. This mask hurts him. It makes his chorea movements worse because he is not getting enough oxygen to his brain. My son is ADHD. Do you think that helps his ADHD? No, it makes it much worse because he's not getting enough oxygen. They're not allowed to take their mask breaks, as they were told that they would. The small kids weren't even told that they could optionally take their mask off when it was ordered that they could do so. The high school kids knew they could, but the little kids did not. They did not know, and they were being yelled at for doing it.
Time's up. Ms. Morgan, thank you for your comments. Next, we have Rachel Price.
name is Rachel Price. I have watched my nieces, my nephews, friends, children all around me go through this mask mandate during schools. Yes, I am Casey's sister. I have watched my nephews come through this mask mandate. It's hard on the adults. It's even worse for the children. We as adults, we can make decisions on whether we break the law or we do not break the law. But the intimidation that the children are receiving is ridiculous, and it has to stop. We have to quit putting our children through this. For the high schoolers, it's not so bad because they're almost grown. So if they rebel, there are almost no consequences. But for the smaller children, they cry. They are sad every single day. They have to go to school because they are intimidated by the staff, the people who are supposed to care and protect them. They feel afraid if they do not comply. It's ridiculous. It is the board members, yourselves, that are making the rules and handing down to these children. You have to stop. If these children, the parents that pay your paychecks, that vote for you and put you on the board, we are asking you to please, as residents of the county, to stop. We love our children. We love the family members. We have to come together as a community and say no more. No more masks on our children. We want to see their lovely faces. We want to hear their laughter. With a mask, you cannot do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Thank you, Ms. Price. Next, we have Jennifer Mathis, representing Haywood County Moms.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mathis. In the 1970s, Dr. Ed Tronick did a still face experiment with parents and children. Within 2 minutes of the child not getting to see the normal reaction from a mother interacting with them, the child began to scream, turn their body, turn away from their mother, losing the idea that she mattered to their mother. So, you put a mask on someone, and most people cannot see the eyes smiling. Some people don't smile with their eyes. I do, but some people don't. What is that doing psychologically to our children? Our mental health system is completely overrun as it is. I used to work in child and adolescent psychology at Mission Hospital, and there's no money in mental health. I stand before you as a wife, a mom, and a community member. As adults, we are to defend and protect all children, whether they are ours or not. We can no longer be okay with them wearing a mask. Psychologically, the effects of the kids not seeing their teachers and their friends' faces, their smiles, their upset, any kind of thing, we learn by nonverbal. As humans, we all have to have a need to know that we are loved, that we are wanted, that we are accepted. That can't be done behind a mask. What about the psychological effects on the teachers and the staff members that are having to do this? Speech pathologists are having to teach children how to correct the way that they speak through a mask. You cannot do that. You try and teach a child how to say vacuum cleaner correctly behind a mask. A speech pathologist can you imagine how difficult that would be? If there are people who don't want to wear a mask, let it be optional. Let them sign a waiver saying that they will not hold the school board or anyone else in the county liable. I stand before you as a wife, a mom, a community member, someone who will fight for every child in this county if I have to, until the bitter end. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mathis. Next, we have Melanie Williams, representing Thrive Community Classes.
Hi, my name's Melanie Williams. I saw a quote this past week that said, "Whatever you're not changing, you're choosing." And I thought about that when I was considering coming here to talk to you guys, because I think it's really easy to pass the buck and say, oh, now we have an option, or we can't make a change here in Haywood County because the governor says. I don't know about you, but I never agreed to let the governor have a choice in how my child was raised or my child's health. I have my own political stance, but regardless, I would not let a stranger who'd never met my child decide their health choices whatsoever. And I have a strange position because I'm a homeschool mom. Last year, when I found out that kids were going to be put into virtual learning and masked, I opened a school in my home. I taught 4th through 11th grade. And those kids never missed a beat. They were together all the time. We learned all the core classes. We learned about nutrition. We made a movie. And if you look at those kids now, in comparison to the children who spent the last year isolated and masked, it's completely different. My daughter's in high school. In the last year, I know of 7 children her age who tried to take their own lives out of despair. 5 of them succeeded. So while we sit here and we talk about a virus and we talk about the mask and these children surviving a virus of some sort, the thing we're not talking about is the damage. And any time that you make a decision in your life, you have to weigh the risks with the benefits. And the reality is we know, because we've experimented on our children for the last year. Okay, our children have been put through one of the most cruel, unnecessary, unscientific experiments in the history of humanity. And it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. We are crippling generations. They don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to process stress, and they don't trust us. They don't trust us to protect them because we're not doing it. And so when we are here tonight, all of us, asking you to make a choice, the thing that I'm worried about is you'll come out through tonight looking like heroes because you'll decide to make it optional. But what happens if Cooper changes his mind? And all of these parents who go home tonight and rejoice that they've been given a little bit of their liberty back, and they choose the school system in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month, that can be ripped away from them and they're in crisis again. So if you're gonna make the choice to keep the children, the masks optional, then stand by that. Be brave, be bold, be leaders. The reality is we are losing faith in you. We are losing faith in our government. We're losing faith in our systems. And the only way to change things is to remove yourselves. So those of you who are interested, myself and several other teachers are starting the Thrive Community Classes. We're a conservative community of professional educators leading students to thrive while prioritizing family as the highest authority in a child's life. We'll be offering classes twice a week, all the core classes. If you're interested, let me know. You have 10 to 20 days at the beginning of the school year to pull your kids out to take funding from them. So that's another way to influence.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you for that option.
All right, I have flyers if anyone.
Next, we have Heath Talley.
Board members, Dr. Nolte, Dr. Putnam, don't know the rest of you. Good evening. I have 2 children in the Haywood County school system. Actually, I have 1 now. 1 just graduated and from Tuscola High School, and another rising sophomore. We all know that COVID-19 is real and has affected many lives. There is no disputing that. I personally know 2 people who have lost their lives from this deadly virus. With that being said, Governor Cooper's mask mandate ends July 30th with no plan to renew it. However, he wants to subject our children ages K through 8 unvaccinated or not, and our unvaccinated high school students to a new mask mandate just for them. That makes absolutely no sense. The rest of the world goes mask-free while our children start the hottest part of the school year wearing a mask, 7 hours per day. I can tell you from experience in my profession, after a couple hours of wearing a mask in an air-conditioned environment, I start feeling fatigued. I lose cognitive ability, and my logic and reasoning are slowed. My throat becomes sore, my eyes water, and my head begins to ache. It becomes hard to focus, and my vision becomes blurry. Now, imagine being a child or young adult trying to learn trigonometry or calculus in a classroom that has little or no air conditioning. I ask this because I've had meetings in many classrooms during August and September here in the Haywood County school system where I was suffocated without a face covering. Our students have already been handicapped by a year and a half of online instruction, which was subpar at best. I say this because I had to pay $320 per month for a math and physical science tutor to make up for the instruction my youngest daughter was lacking. Next, I want to address the vaccination. If the vaccine works and you've received it, it should not matter whether another student is vaccinated or not. Being forced to wear a mask because one chooses not to inject their child with an experimental drug is an act of discrimination. Our bodies, our choice, right? To wrap this up, I would just ask you to think about the negative impacts this mandate would thrust upon our children. They have already been through so much. It is time they return to normal educational environment. Finally, I would like to acknowledge that Union, Stanley, Rowan, Madison, and Macon counties have decided to allow students the option to wear a face mask or face covering. Thank you for your time. I hope you consider the points I made while making your decision. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. Thank you, Mr. Talley. Thank you. Laurel Smith.
Good evening. My name is Laurel Smith. I'm a mother of 3 children who are enrolled in the Haywood County School District. I'm standing before you this evening to speak out against the mandatory mask for our children when the school year begins. During the previous year, my children would get in the car after school with tears in their eyes because the mask caused their headaches, shortness of breath, and would make them cough. It broke my heart. All summer long, our children have been maskless in theaters, camps, sleepovers, churches, restaurants, and stores. Look around us right now. How many of y'all are masked? There'll be less in a classroom, squished together, and I mean, there's no logic. It's illogical and unfair for us to require our children to put masks back on for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. The North Carolina Public Health Toolkit that was published on June 8, 2020 said schools were required to enforce mask wearing for students and staff during the 2020 school year. But that school kit has been updated on July 21st, 2021 that states that schools should require indoor face coverings. This is substantially different wording. I realize that some of you are concerned about lawsuits, but the wording of this toolkit should alleviate your fears. If not, then why not have the parents who choose to allow our children not to wear masks sign a waiver? I'm sure that most of us would be willing to do that. I love Haywood County Schools. We have the most supportive principals, counselors, and teachers. I appreciate every one of you on the school board, and you as well, Dr. Nolte. When I called you all to see if we could make masks optional for our school and for the staff, every one of you were respectful, and you took the time to listen to me. And so when I say this right now, I say it with no animosity or disrespect. But Dr. Nolte, school board, and Attorney Smathers, y'all work for us. And so it is time that the choice to wear a mask or not be put back in the rightful hands of the parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next, we have Virginia Moe. Did I say that right?
Hello, I'm Virginia Moe. I have a grandson starting at Lake Junaluska Elementary in kindergarten this year. I come to you tonight asking that you require students and teachers to wear masks as school begins. Children need their education and social activities, and parents need to get back to work. The best way for these things to happen is for students and teachers to stay healthy. We know that for every germ the regular COVID puts out, this new variant puts out 1,000, infecting that many more people. We know that the CDC only this afternoon recommended that all people, vaccinated or not, wear masks indoors. We know that there was one new COVID infection in Haywood 4 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, there were 13. 2 weeks ago, there were 35, and last week there were 62 new infections in Haywood County. These numbers will almost certainly continue to climb. We also know that teenagers think they are invincible and they will not wear masks if they have a choice. We know that if masks are not required, many people will just not bother. We know that of the people who want to wear masks, some will lose or forget them or be intimidated. In fact, it is likely that if masks are not required, soon very few students and teachers will be wearing them, and in that case, we know that more people will become infected. We know that also that masks are, at this point, are our best defense against those infections. This morning I heard that a friend's extended family is suffering from multiple COVID infections. A vaccinated grandfather died last night. A vaccinated grandmother is in the hospital. A vaccinated son is at home with COVID. A vaccinated daughter is at home with COVID. 2 children, a daughter 8 years old and a son 5 years old, are bedridden with the COVID. All of these people were vaccinated if they could get it. If they could get old enough to get the vaccination. They attended an event for an extended family. They have no idea where the original infection came from, and they didn't wear masks. If our schools become sources of contagion, families could end up like that. No learning will take place when people are sick. Your responsibility is teaching and learning. You are on the school board because you care about Haywood County, you care about the citizens, you care about the students and the teachers. We are relying on you as our school leaders to keep our schools safe places where students can learn. Your vote to require masks will tell people you take seriously your responsibility for the health and welfare of our students. Students learn because of your leadership. They need to be safe and healthy. Voting for required masks may not be popular, but it's good sense, good leadership, and the right thing for you as leaders to do. Thank you for your service and your time, and please vote to require masks in schools.
Thank you, Ms. Moe. Next, we have Jess Cook.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir.
And thank you to all the parents who covered so much ground. I'm going to stick more technical stuff. I'd like to start by reminding y'all, especially you history scholars who might have forgotten, Marbury versus Madison. All laws which are repugnant to the Constitution, and in the time context of the word repugnant, doesn't mean it was disgusting. It means it was in conflict. All laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void, period. Now, I know that a mask rule is not a law. It's just a rule. We went through a history of development of rules having force of law, beginning with FDR and the New Deal. The seeds were planted there. And then they were strengthened by Richard Nixon in the implementation of the Environmental Protection Agency, and giving the agency, rather than power to advise Congress, actually power to make law, giving their rules power of law. that was strengthened by Jimmy Carter, strengthened by George W. Bush, and strengthened by Bill Clinton, to where we have non-elected bureaucrats making rules that carry force of law. Forgetting the U.S. Code. U.S. Code 436, paragraph 491, states that no law or rule that is in conflict with the Constitution will stand. So these are things to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, and by the way, I used to cover school boards for the press. I also coached the law club at a high school, taught them litigation techniques, how to research precedents and understand them, and taught them rules of evidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have a situation where the school board sits, and I must thank you for being so civil. A lot of the stuff you see on TV, you see some tyrannical beasts up there, and you all have comported yourself in a very admirable way, regardless of what you believe or how you act. Your public interaction has been very, very admirable. Now, the school board sits at the pleasure of the voter. The schools are accountable to the parent. The schools are accountable to the board. But the school board sits at the pleasure of the voters. Now, what voters in this community are so interested in this particular subject that they are here? And I haven't seen a one stand in favor of the possibility of masking up the kids. And by the way, my sister has been teaching at the same school for 30 years, K through 6. She's a kindergarten teacher now. She also does administrative work. I spent 2 hours on the phone with her last night and 2 hours on the phone with her today. You don't want to let her in here to talk about masks. But the voters are here. And what you see is 1/100th of the influence that will show up at the ballot box, because they talk to their friends, they talk to their neighbors, they talk to their families. So, thank you.
Time's up. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook, for your comments. Rosa Bevis. Am I saying that correctly?
Perfect, or Beavis.
Beavis? Okay.
I thank you for this opportunity to talk to all of you. I'm vested in COVID. I've lost my mother due to COVID. I have a long hauler daughter that's been sick since December, had to leave her job, and now has a quarter of her pay. So I understand this. Having said that, I have grandchildren, I have children. I brought my children here to a small town so they'd understand God and country. And this is why we came here. I want my children, and I'll paraphrase Patrick Henry, give us liberty or give us death. Now, I'm older. I'll take death. If our kids go to school and they come back and give me another problem that my parents and other people have experienced, I'm ready. I believe in God. I'm ready to go. But our children need to understand what liberty means. And liberty means the option to put this on or take it off. How are we going to raise little patriots when they don't even have an option? And this is what it's all about, letting our children understand from a young age that our country is worth having given anything for liberty. And I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beavis. Now, the chairman has a dilemma. I'm up to number 15, and then I skip all the way up to 21.
I've got the rest. There's no names.
Okay. All right, we're good. Just wanted to make sure that everybody had opportunity to sign up. All right. All right, number 21 is Natasha Bright. Is that correct, Natasha? Okay.
Before you ask, I've taken it off because I am vaccinated. So, first of all, I listen to all of y'all, and I understand that you all care about your children, and I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate that y'all are here, and you know, I think that's awesome. Thank you. So, yeah. So I would so. You know, I sent you an email and I sent you a lot of information, and I was going to go through it all, but didn't want everybody's eyes to glaze over. If you are interested, you can ask me for it, and I've got it here. But one of you all said that masks don't work, and because of the microns, and I actually have that study, I think. But anyway, it's true. They don't work very well at protecting you, but they work well for protecting others. So I wear a mask to protect you, you wear a mask to protect me. Unless it's something like N95's, you know, a better mask. But, so because of that, when you say that you'll make masks optional, then that means that, you know, my son would have to wear an N95 to get protection, to just go to school, in my view. And I personally don't think that that's fair. So parents like me don't really have any recourse because they also can't have their children vaccinated until probably around September and October. So I would like to recommend to have masks be mandatory just up to the point where parents who would like to vaccinate their children can. And that's, like, I don't expect, you know, I'm not telling you guys to vaccinate your children or anything like that. I just would like the option to vaccinate my child and know that my child is safe. So, that being said, I also wanted to kind of give a personal anecdote. I read about a little boy, his name was Wyatt Gibson. He was 5, and he died of COVID about a week ago. Georgia. He had no other underlying conditions, and his dad said that he had lost his best friend, and his mom said he was nothing but pure love and the perfect overload of happiness. And it reminded me of when I was with my son in the hospital, and he had encephalitis, lacrosse encephalitis, and I sat in a dark hospital with him for days. For the first 2 days, I wasn't sure if he knew I was there, but I hoped he did. But I was so lucky because he made it, and he recovered. But because of that experience, I know that just because it is rare for a child to get sick, doesn't mean that they won't. Doesn't mean it's impossible. And I know that, like, you know, if I can prevent another person, another mom or another child to go through that, then, you know, I don't mind masking my children, you know, just for another couple months. So, but thank you. I appreciate all of y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Bright, for your comments. I assume that's all that signed up for the board. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have Kim Jackson. Kim? By the way, thanks everyone for being patient through the longevity of that. I appreciate the comments and the civility of the crowd. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
On May, Chairman Francis, members of the board, Dr. Nolte, Dr. Putnam, Ms. Barker, and others, tonight I'd like to talk to you about the Emergency Connectivity Fund. On May 11th, the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, released a report and order establishing the Emergency Connectivity Fund program. Congress then appropriated $7.17 billion for the ECF program, which will be administered by USAC. And USAC usually administers our E-rate program, which you guys are familiar with. This funding may be used to pay for devices or connectivity for staff or students without sufficient access to a laptop or internet access. Eligible expenses are a laptop or Chromebook that's reimbursable up to $400, or a Wi-Fi hotspot up to $250. This fund follows a similar application process as E-rate. It's a little more flexible than E-rate has been in the past, but there are a few restrictions that must be followed. It must be used for educational purposes. It must meet remote learning needs. It must meet an otherwise unmet connectivity need. And by unmet needs, they've defined that as the student would otherwise not have a connected device to engage in remote learning. It must be assigned, tracked, and used at home. It can be used at school too, but the device cannot stay at school exclusively. And it must remain in service for a minimum of 3 years. We're proposing a plan to provide devices for our 2 traditional high schools because the need is the greatest there, and those students take devices between home and school. Currently, we have 2,089 Chromebooks for our 2 traditional high schools. That accounts for a loss of 140 devices that were either lost this year or just did not get turned back in. We have 990 devices that reach end of life this school year, meaning that they no longer receive critical security updates. So we take those out of service at that time. After our device replacement plan, that leaves us with 1,438 devices at both high schools. The total checked out this past school year was 1,658, which leaves us a deficit of 220 devices. At $371.20 per device for a Chromebook with a 5-year replacement plan, or 5-year accidental warranty, that is a cost of $81,664. If we were to determine an unmet need as our entire student population at both of those schools, that is 461 devices, which would be a cost of $171,123.20. We are awaiting additional guidance from our consultants. This is a very short application window, and there's been a lot of unanswered questions. But tonight I'm asking for approval to proceed with the application process that is due August 13th based on the feedback that we received from our consultants.
I'll make that motion that we approve the emergency connective fund that was just presented.
Is that you, Jimmy?
Yes, sir. Sorry, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Is that you, Jimmy? I heard this second came out of heaven. All right, we have a motion from Mr. Kirkpatrick, seconded by Mr. Rogers, to approve the Emergency Connectivity Fund application process. And any question or discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Next, we have Dr. Putnam.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for your consideration, we've had a request from Shining Rock Classical Academy to provide meals to their middle school age students. That's approximately 80 meals. Again, for your information, we are already providing meals to several daycares in the county. All meals are federally reimbursed at this time and free for school-age students. So it is a money-making venture for us, Haywood County Schools.
Okay.
If you have questions or any further considerations, I'm happy to entertain those now, or you can ask me later.
Do you want to have any questions for Dr. Putnam?
Yeah, I do. This is Ronnie. Will they pick the meals up or do we deliver them?
There's a we will actually be delivering them. Those. Okay. So we've had a change in plans. It was my understanding. So they will pick them up.
Is this causing any undue?
Okay, and which school will they be provided from?
Waynesville Middle School.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Putnam.
Does this cause any undue hardships to our system, or?
The first thing we did was evaluate, do we have available staff? Can we handle the additional 80 meals, and we're adequately staffed to handle 80 meals.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Putnam.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Nolte, our policy 7305. First reading.
Yes, Mr. Francis, put this up here where I can read to you. I know we don't normally do this with policies, and Mr. Kirkpatrick, I promise it's not long. I also wanted to just thank you for allowing us to put a few regular items on this agenda. We're just around the corner from school starting. As you all know, we have gone to considerable effort over the last 3 years to make sure that our students were treated well and felt welcome at school and felt like they could be there without divisiveness or disruptions. And we've taken several steps along those lines. To continue in that vein, we have drafted, with the help of Campbell Shatley, and we also met with our policy committee, in addition to the employee code of conduct. And I have to say up front before I read the potential addition to that policy, that like most policies, this is written for the few. You know, we have discipline policies for students and for adults, and most students and adults aren't ever impacted by those. But we are pretty serious about our students being able to come to school and feel like what they believe is okay, that their race is okay, and that their sex is okay, and that we want to make sure that our staff people are teaching instructional standards and not trying to overtly or overly influence students with their own beliefs. And so I ask you to consider this for first reading. I'm not sure if we have enough time between this first reading and the next meeting to vote on it. You could check with Pat on that, but I present this to you at this time. I did talk to principals about this today. We're having our 2-day training with principals and central office staff prior to the beginning of school. And if this is passed by the board, we'll cover this with employees on our big opening staff development day. So this is a proposed addition to the Code of Conduct for Employees. That's policy 7305, and we would put it under section C. Let me just read it to you, and then I'll entertain any questions. It's up there. I'll read it to you anyway. Many classes include lessons on history, civics, politics, and current events. During these lessons, students are a captive audience, and teachers should focus on the state and local curriculum standards and critical thinking skills. Teachers should not focus on their own personal beliefs or those of their students. Lost my place there. Further, students and employees should be able to attend school and school-related activities free from overt criticism, alienation, or retaliation for their personal, political, social, or religious beliefs. Assignments and materials shall be used in context that make it clear that Haywood County Schools does not sponsor or promote particular concepts or resources related to sex, race, and sex, which are characteristics, or personal, political, social, or religious beliefs. So in short, when students come, we shouldn't be trying to tell them that their beliefs are wrong and ours are right, or that there's something special about them or wrong about them because of their sex or their race. All instructional activities shall focus on state or locally approved curriculum standards and assigned courses or classes that are age appropriate. It should not be used to influence or inculcate, that means overly train, students with a particular belief. School employees shall not use their position to promote or impose their own personal, political, social, or religious beliefs on students. School employees shall not criticize, humiliate, embarrass, or discredit students for their race, their sex, or their personal, political, social, or religious beliefs. Nothing in this section shall be construed as prohibiting speech protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and accessing I lost my screen. And accessing
materials
on an individual basis for the purpose of research or independent study. So again, this is written for probably a very small percentage of our staff members who just might have a tendency to try to impose what they believe on our students, and that, as has been expressed by many of our speakers tonight, is probably not their job. You know, what people believe is really probably more of a family issue than something that we need to be controlling at school. And we just felt like it would be appropriate to take this step so that when children come into our buildings, they know that what they believe is not something that we would intend to change or try to overly influence.
Any questions about policy 7305? It's my understanding, Mr. Smathers, if the board chooses to do so at the next meeting, we could vote to suspend the rules. And it would still allow time for public input between now and August 9th to respond. Okay. So this will be tabled until the board chooses to take action on August the 9th or until the following meeting, which would meet the requirement of the 30-day time frame. Is that correct? All right. Thank you, Mr. Smathers. Thank you, Dr. Nolte.
Yes, just a couple other things before we get back to the masking issue, the main issue at hand for the meeting. First of all, under item 11, we wanted to make you aware and make the public aware of House Bill 91, which is called the Accountability and Fair Play in Athletics bill. You as a board, many of our parents, athletes, athletic directors and principals, we have worked very, very hard for many, many years to try to make sure that our schools are fairly placed in classifications and in conferences. And we have provided lots of information to the state school board. Mr. Smathers, on the board's behalf, sent some information to a public hearing, and it like that the General Assembly may be working to correct some of the unfairness and bias that we have experienced from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. So I wanted to thank you for your work and your strong stand in the past to have fair play for our students. If this bill passes, I understand that the state would create a new commission that would be connected to the State Department of Public Instruction or the state school board. I won't say much more, but the greatest benefit of that, from my perspective, is that if we are unfairly treated, then we have all of the appeal and grievance procedures for our athletic teams that our students and parents and staff members have every day. So just to make you aware of that, and again, thank you for your strong stand in the past.
Chairman, I want to thank the board for supporting that. I mean, I really do think, you know, from talking with people all across the state, that we're the ones that really got this ball rolling to hopefully get that organization changed. I firmly believe that, and I think the statute will, in effect, in their way of doing business, and it'll be run by the state, which I think it should be.
Well, on my level, I can say the frustration level of this board and our athletes in this county and our schools have suffered really for no good reason other than the political swayings of that organization. But anyway, I'll leave my personal
I think it did pass the I think it did pass the first house and is over to the second body now, if I'm correct. Or is it still in the House?
This has to do with the classifications of our high schools and many other issues that we faced throughout the time. Now, we need a motion to support this.
We put approval on there because I did not know if you all wanted to take action to support that bill or not. I bring it to you for information, but we put approval on there because we thought you all may or may not want to take some action related to the bill.
Mr. Burnett wanted to be recognized.
I just want to make a motion that we do support this bill.
Okay.
I would like to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we got a second and a third. So that's good. We have a motion from Mr. Burnett. I think Mr. Nesbitt beat you, Mr. Rogers, to the second. Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? There
I
being
would like to also say thank you to the to our board attorney and also for Dr. Nolte, and again, the rest of our board members, I applaud them for our children in Edson County. They deserve the right to be having the fair competition that I think this bill will help throughout our scholastic abilities in our high schools and all throughout our Haywood County schools and all the schools in this state. I think it's really helped.
Any other comments? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Board. And then one other quick item. My Future NC is an organization that is working to increase the number of work-related certifications that students can earn while in high school. And we've done a pretty good job, especially in connection with the college. They've started some new programs, engineering and electrical, and we have had things like masonry and automotive and nursing assistant and many other things in the past. They have asked us to bring this resolution to you to support their work aimed at increasing the number of work-related certifications that our students can earn. So I bring the resolution. It's attached, and I know you've had a chance to look at it. It's attached, so I bring this resolution to you for your consideration.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rogers made a motion to approve the resolution to support My Future North Carolina attainment goal. Second by Dr. Rogers. Any questions or discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Dr. Nolte. Next, we have some discussion. Dr. Putnam will lead the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have, in particular, Mr. Chairman, have wisely opened up a public comment section to begin our board meeting tonight and even extended it. We have with us tonight Dr. Mark Jabin, and he is our Haywood County Medical Director. And we also have with us Sarah Henderson, who is our new Haywood County Health Department Director. And we've asked them to come and share some information with you this afternoon.
Hello. Really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this conversation and really appreciate all the folks who came to express how they feel about this. I have a question for everybody. How many of you would prefer students to be in person in class for learning and to be together? Raise your hand. Thank you. And how many of you want a safe place for student, teachers, and staff? Thank you. So I'm glad to see that we're all on the same page here. The question becomes, I think, how do we resolve, or how do we reach a resolution when one person's pursuit of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness bumps up against another person's? Tonight, the conversation's around mask or no mask in school, but this might not be the actual question we should be asking. Rather, to achieve both learning and safety, the better questions might be, what is the threshold of infection above which we get neither learning nor safety? And what must we do to provide that margin of safety? And where are we right now? We know from last year the measures that work to prevent transmission of SARS-CoV-2 in our schools. And if you recall the Swiss cheese model, several layers of protected measures, all of which, none enough on their own, but all that add up together to get the result we saw. So we know what worked. We knew it was unrealistic to not have any infections in school. So the approach we took was structuring the day in a way to avoid anyone being a close contact, that one infection did not become 100, which would cause a total shutdown. It included things like distancing, staggered days, reducing the number of people any one person comes in contact with, good ventilation, which is why outside is safer than inside, good and frequent hand washing, good screening questions and mechanisms, good contact tracing, and face coverings. And deployed all together, we were able to provide safety and learning. Vaccines have added yet another important protective layer. So I don't think the question is mask or no mask. And just to be clear, in my view at least, optional mask is essentially no mask in terms of the risk of someone's choice upon someone else. There are several things that will be different about this school year from last school year. Distancing will be different. All the kids will be there every day all together. We know more people together, more contact means more infections. We know that crowded situations are where we see a great deal of spread. We're dealing with a virus that is different. Delta is 4 to 5 more times more contagious than the variant we were dealing with last year. We know that viral loads in people infected with Delta are 1,000 times greater than what we saw last year with the virus at hand. In the space of little more than a month, Delta now represents around 90% of new infections. North Carolina right now is on a steeper upslope of rising cases than where we were at last November as we ramped up into the winter surge. 3 weeks ago in Western North Carolina, and I bring the region into this conversation because many parents travel for work, because it was and will remain much more likely that a child brings an infection to school rather than takes it home from school. What parents do at home, at work, out and about, is really the key to school infections. But in Western North Carolina 3 weeks ago, there were 6 counties in the green, 1 in the orange. And just to refresh what that means, green represents a level of infection low enough that if sustained over 2 to 3 months, represents control of the virus. We were there for a few weeks. Yellow means low cases, but still with the potential for spikes. We must remain vigilant. Orange means accelerating spread, and red means, well, last winter. Today, there are no counties in the region in the green, 7 in the orange, which includes Haywood County, and 1 as of today back into the red. Only 1 Western North Carolina still has a very low rate, and we hope that they will take the warning of their neighbors as they go forward. Moreover, the surrounding states, Tennessee, Georgia, and South Carolina, which have all had lower rates of infection than North Carolina since May, have now bounded well beyond even the increases we have seen in North Carolina. And Florida is now seeing levels like last winter. I bring this up because we travel to these places. It has an impact on Haywood County. 3 weeks ago, test positivity in North Carolina was 2.4%. Today, it's 10.4%. Haywood County 3 weeks ago was 0.2%. Today, it's 5.6%. 5% is the important threshold that you really would prefer to stay below. Once you get above that, indicates concern. And we know that these are more than likely low figures because we know people are having symptoms and not getting tested. We know a substantial number of people in Haywood County testing positive either don't answer our phone calls or are not willing to share contacts and not participate in contact tracing. So these numbers are probably not low. They're probably not high. They're probably, if anything, low. Today on that scale in orange is between 10 new cases a day average per 100,000 population. We have a population of 60,000. Between 10 and 25 is in the orange range. We today are at 13. If you were concerned last winter about community spread, you should be concerned right now. And right now is the time for us to act as a community so that we don't get to last winter. We don't need to wait until then. And then there are the usual fall viral illnesses that start like clockwork 3 weeks into the new school year. Delta has less of the classic symptoms in previous versions, less loss of taste and smell, more like the allergies, sinus, and colds that people experience. And we've all been 2 years without being exposed to any of these or the flu. So how more susceptible are we all going to be to these? And talk about difficulty distinguishing one from the other, making it hard to keep kids in school, teachers and staff on the job. But where is the margin of safety? Given rising cases, kids and teachers being more together, a much more contagious virus, what is the threshold that we can accept for cases in our schools when too many is too many, that we get neither learning nor safety? We've all gotten used to relaxing our protective public health measures over the past few weeks. Rising cases suggest we have relaxed too much too soon, once again. And how many times will it take for all of us to learn that lesson? Whatever your decision tonight, you're going to catch grief. The real challenge is being able to articulate the reasoning behind your decision for those who disagree and those who do agree and those who don't agree. And accepting that, whether cases go up or down from here, there will be a time that either necessitates a pivot or provides an opportunity to pivot. Given the rolling wave of cases that we have seen, which was as predicted early on in this, and we likely continue to see, given the pandemic and people's personal choices, we have this opportunity several times this school year alone to pivot as the numbers guide us. The key is to be flexible and nimble. No decision in these regards will be long-lasting or needs to be long-lasting, whatever the choice. The actual question before us is, when do we have too many cases that learning and safety are not happening? Which makes more sense? To pivot away from face coverings once cases numbers come down within the margin of safety, or to pivot to face covering if we find ourselves above that threshold? Which is a safer path for our children, our schools, and our community? Sarah?
Thank you for having me,
Thank you.
because I'm obviously not on the well-liked side of the room. So the most important thing for us to remember is that this decision affects all of our school-age children in Haywood County, and that no one child is more important than the other. As I address some of the facts and figures of the pandemic in our county, I want to ask you, what do we have to lose? As it stands, we have 4,623 positive COVID cases in Haywood County. 504 of those are residents under the age of 18. In Haywood County, children returned face-to-face under Plan A on March the 23rd, 2021. In the last 53 days of school, there were 62 positive COVID cases in children ages 5 to 18. Of those, and that was in the last 53 days of the school year. That's also keeping in mind that our children were masked and 20% of our population of Haywood County schools were still at home on a virtual option. But here's the bigger picture. If those 62 children had been in their classrooms without a mask, their entire class would have been considered close contacts. With an average class size of 25 students, we would have isolated 1,150 students for 14 days. That's more than the enrollment at Pisgah or Tuscola. When the school year begins in August, it will be the first time since the pandemic that all of our students will return face-to-face without a virtual option. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, and the governor have all made it very clear that our priority is to safely return to face-to-face learning. As a parent, I understand the importance of our children being in the classroom, and as a public health director, I understand the importance of keeping our children healthy. We want virtual learning to be an option and not a necessity. Guidance from the CDC just this afternoon recommends universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, and visitors to K-12 schools, regardless of vaccine status. Children should return to full-time in-person learning in the fall with a layered preventative strategy. The layered strategy means we start low and go slow. The first change is that we're sending all of our students back, 100% of the population back face-to-face for learning. So what do we have to lose by keeping our masks in place? Let's think about what we have to lose if we take them off. If we send our children back to school without masks and we put them in a classroom for 8 hours, those 25 students and the teacher are all considered close contacts. If one person in that room tests positive, the whole class and the teacher go home for 14 days. If that's 25 out of the classroom, 25 parents at home for 14 days caring for a child, with or without pay from work. And that's only if they're in elementary school. If they're in middle school or in high school, where they're exposed to 25 different students in each class, we could be talking about 100 students instead of 25, and 4 teachers instead of 1. When we talk about numbers like that, then we talk about closing school doors again and returning to virtual learning. Then our goal of keeping our students in the classroom face-to-face comes to a catastrophic end, and there's far more to lose if we take them off. There's more to think about than just our children. You have faculty, staff, and school nurses to consider. How do the teachers feel about being in a classroom, potentially unmasked and unvaccinated with the population? Have you asked them? How do the school nurses feel? I can tell you because I asked them myself today, individually, and their supervisor, and they unanimously said they wanted to see children back in school masked at the beginning of the school year. These are the nurses that care for your children in your absence, and they do so because they love your children and our school system. You also have to consider the ramifications of taking masks off. We've heard over and over again that you don't want to be the mask police and you don't want to be the vaccine police. So if you take them off and relax them, and cases continue to rise and we have to put them back on, are you willing to enforce that, just as you would a dress code? Are you willing to send a child home that then refuses to put a mask on? Ultimately, this isn't about mask or no mask. It's about healthy children, and that's why we're here. We all have the same goal, and it's to keep our kids in the classroom. What do we have to do to keep them there? I urge you to take all things into consideration when making your decision, and your decision doesn't have to be made in this moment. Take the time to talk to your teachers and staff. Read the new guidance from the CDC. Wait on the press conference from the governor tomorrow. But take all things into consideration and ask yourself, what do we have to lose? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Javen and Ms. Henderson.
I'm wondering, any questions from what you guys, well, hold on, I'll talk with any of you afterwards, but this is their board, this is their board meeting.
I would like to say something real quick about what she just said. That's incorrect.
It's out of order. Dr. Javen, if you want to answer individual questions, we can do it after the meeting, okay?
Happy, I'm just wondering from you guys' perspective, if there are any questions for Sarah or me in terms of what we brought. If not, that's fine. I just want to make that opportunity.
Does anybody have any questions? Dr. Javen.
What is the vaccination rate in Haywood County? Where does it stand right now? 60%, 70%, 1, 2?
Right. Number is not fully clear, actually, because we don't know the number from the vaccine at the VA or at Western Carolina. But the official number is somewhere a little bit north of 29,000, so roughly about 50%. My best estimate is if we add in the people who've gotten their vaccines in other places, we're probably somewhere around 55%. In terms of school-age kids, Sarah? 9% in terms of the 12 to 18-year-olds who are eligible.
That's 9% of people eligible?
Pardon me?
That's 9% of people eligible.
No.
12 to 18?
Yes.
12 to 18 or the entire school?
Not,
9% of those that are eligible to be vaccinated.
12 to 18.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, board members?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Javen. I, for one, need to take a little break. I'm going to call for a 15-minute recess. Let's call the meeting back to order, please. Thank you. Now we're going to have a discussion among our board members about our intentions on the mask use considerations this evening, and I know we've talked some individually, but not as a group. So I'd like to start the discussion with, board thoughts on the presentations tonight, as well as the parents' presentations, and any comments that anyone might want to make.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say, first of all, I appreciate everybody that showed up tonight, that cares about children of this county. That has been our desire from the beginning, is to make sure that our children are treated fairly, respectfully, and to do what's right for them in every decision that we make. So we appreciate y'all being here and giving us your input. It's very helpful. Sometimes it's very difficult to sit on a board and not get any feedback and not hear the things that you need to hear. So we do greatly appreciate the input. Thank you very much.
I'd like to echo that. I appreciate every telephone call, every text, every email. We've gotten a lot of them, and I appreciate you being here to personally come and tell us how you feel, what you're thinking. And my personal goal is to make sure that every person is treated fairly, that we protect our rights and our freedoms, and at the same time try to protect the health and the welfare of all the students and educate them. So, and that is a fine line, and hopefully we do what's best for the children.
Any other comments? My personal comments are that I feel like this has become highly politicized, unfortunately. And unfortunately, I think some of our scientific communities nationwide have fallen prey to politics at times. And unfortunately, it's caused a lot of emotion. The establishments that we trusted and we lived our whole lives looking for guidance has somewhat let me down. And I feel like that we've come to a point in our nation where we need to protect those that cannot be protected, our children. And, you know, I've been on this board a long time, and there's been, you know, 4 or 5 board meetings in the last 20-some-odd years I've been on the board that stand out, and this will be one of them. Closing Hazelwood School was not a whole lot of fun, I can tell you that much. But I think the board always has strived to do what is right and what is best for the children. And, you know, one thing that I know about this board, I've worked with them a lot of hours this past year through COVID, is that we find a need, we'll meet. We'll make a decision. We'll do what's right. If we do something wrong, we will make it right, if it's any way possible to do so. And I applaud this board, and I thank our administration for giving us the tools and the information to make good decisions. And I think tonight is one of those nights that, like I said, with those board meetings that you'll remember, this will be one of them. And I think that the Haywood County Consolidated School System, following the termination of the current mask mandate on July 30th, 2021 at 5 p.m., will make mask wearing optional for all personnel, students, and visitors to schools and facilities in Haywood County. That's what I feel.
Yes.
Would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Yes.
Dr. Rogers made a motion. I hear a second.
Second.
I think Mr. Nesbitt got the second in, if I caught it right. Anyway, are there any questions or comments on the motion on the floor?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment, if I may, please.
Mr. Rogers.
I would also like to echo what you have previously said. You and I have both been on this board for 21 years now, and I tell you, like you say, this is a heavily weighted decision. I do want to say thank you for all those that are involved and been there, voicing their opinions, and thank you to the citizens of Haywood County. we pray that the good Lord takes care of our children, and we want our children to have the best availability they can have to the best education possible. And like you said before, we really hope that we can make the right things to help our kids. Get it wrong, we're going to make it right. And we thank all those children, and thank all those parents, and thank our community of Haywood County.
Any other comments or questions from the board members? There being no further discussion, we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on our agenda, we have Dr. Nolte for the personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Should I pause a minute and let people leave, or just go ahead?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Francis and board. At this time, I bring to you the information that was discussed previously in closed session regarding personnel. For your information, we have 12 separation from employments, 23 employee status changes, and 4 leave of absence. For your approval, we have 15 employments, 12 employee status changes, 2 leave of absence, 6 employee coaches, 3 non-employee coaches, 1 volunteer services, and 4 contracted services.
Make a motion, we approve the personnel as presented.
Second. Second by Mr. Nesbitt. Motion was made by Mr. Kirkpatrick. Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? There being none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Board, and if I may have just a moment, I want to thank you for dealing with many tough decisions throughout the pandemic. You have met a lot of times. You have received a lot of feedback on various issues in the last year and a half, and you have made decisions firmly. And that, again, I don't like to talk bad about other folks, but I don't always see that when I take time to watch other boards that are videos. So I appreciate you for your work and all the things that you have done to help us provide an education for our students during this time.
Thank you, Dr. Nolte. There being nothing to come before the board at this time, meeting adjourned.